An evening that seemed ordinary on CNN suddenly turned into a media earthquake. As the bright lights of the live town hall poured down, all eyes were fixed on a conversation between two figures no one expected to clash. Judge Judy, the icon of fairness, face to face with Attorney General Pam Bondi, the powerful woman of the conservative wing. What was supposed to be a discussion on immigration policy quickly spiraled out of control, and then it exploded. Judge Judy, with her razor-sharp voice, suddenly stood up, pointing directly at her opponent. "You don't even know what you're talking about. 20 years on the bench, and I have to listen to this." The audience fell silent, but Pam Bondi's ice-cold counterattack was what set the internet ablaze. Just hours later, the atmosphere in the studio that day was so tense it could be sliced into pieces. Two powerful women from two generations with completely opposing views. Judge Judy Schwindlin, an American television cultural icon renowned for her sharp, no-nonsense courtroom style, and Pam Bondi, former Florida Attorney General, a bold and battle-tested conservative lawyer. Judy, with over 20 years as a family court judge and a blockbuster TV show, represented a generation that believed in absolute legal discipline and personal responsibility. Meanwhile, Bondi brought a modern, hardline approach, unafraid of controversial policies like deporting criminals under the Alien Enemies Act. The CNN town hall began with formality. Host Anderson Cooper, with his familiar calm demeanor, introduced both guests with respectful words, highlighting each one's notable achievements. A legendary judge who became a pop culture icon and a seasoned prosecutor who once held Florida's highest judicial responsibility. The initial questions about immigration policy were handled neatly and professionally. Judge Judy spoke with a commanding presence, her words concise and precise, as if she were in the middle of a trial. Meanwhile, Pam Bondi displayed her sharpness, each argument backed by data and specific examples, showcasing the deep experience of someone who had tackled hundreds of cases, big and small. Everything was fine until Anderson Cooper asked the most sensitive question of the night. "Miss Bondi, please share your stance on using the Alien Enemies Act to deport undocumented immigrants, especially in cases where they're suspected of gang affiliations." Instantly, the air in the studio grew heavy. The entire audience held its breath. Pam Bondi didn't hesitate. With eyes sharp as a blade and a voice brimming with confidence, she looked straight into the camera. "The numbers don't lie. Dealing with transnational criminal organizations, gangs exploiting porous borders to smuggle drugs, weapons, and violence into our country. Deporting those who threaten public safety is necessary, not heartless." Then she turned to Judy, her eyes unblinking, her voice still calm but resolute. "We need the courage to call the problem what it is. The current system is failing. Strong law enforcement isn't oppression, it's protecting those who follow the law." Judge Judy's eyes narrowed. Her fingers began tapping lightly on the table, a familiar signal to anyone who had watched her on TV, a warning that a storm was brewing. Bondi pressed on, unaware she had crossed a line with her opponent. "We can't keep ignoring threats in the name of kindness. No country thrives by letting criminals hide in the cracks of compassion. As a prosecutor for over 2 decades, I've gone after drug traffickers and gangs that terrorize communities. As Attorney General, I'm doing the same on a larger scale, people by removing real threats like transnational gangs. My policy isn't politics, it's responsibility." Bondi's words rang with confidence, but Judge Judy was not easily swayed. She crossed her arms, her eyes narrowing as if sizing up a defendant on her show. "Responsibility," she repeated, her voice laced with sarcasm. "You talk about responsibility, but I see your policies as a performance to please the powerful. The Justice Department should stand above politics, not become a tool for someone to score points. I've seen enough criminals try to skirt the law by blaming the system. Don't tell me that cracking down on gangs is the only solution when we need to teach people to take responsibility for their actions." The air in the studio grew stifling. A few audience members whispered, sensing the escalating tension. Bondi tilted her head slightly, showing no sign of losing her composure, but her eyes grew sharper, like a fighter preparing to strike back. "Miss Schindlin," Bondi replied, her voice steady but carrying the weight of confidence, "I'm not here to teach people how to live. My job is to protect them from those who don't care about the law. When I prosecuted a drug lord in Florida, I wasn't thinking about political points. I was thinking about families no longer living in fear. If you think that's politics, maybe you've been in a TV courtroom too long." Bondi's remarks sent a ripple through the audience, some cheering, others stunned by her boldness. Judge Judy, unaccustomed to being publicly challenged, clenched her fists, her lips pursed into a tight line. You're talking to me about TV courtrooms, she shot back, her voice rising as if she was standing at the bench. I've handled over 20,000 cases before you even stepped into a real courtroom. I know what justice is, and I know when it's being twisted by people like you who turn the Justice Department into part of a political game. Bondi remained still, but her eyes flashed with a cold glint. Cooper, sensing the heat rising, tried to intervene. Let's stay calm, ladies, he said, his voice slightly shaky. Let's return to the policy discussion. But Judge Judy cut him off, pointing at Bondi. No, I'm not done. I'm tired of hearing politicians like her use fancy words to cover up what they're doing. Justice isn't a tool for you to polish your boss's resume. The studio lights seemed to burn brighter, illuminating the debate table where the two powerful women faced off. The audience, from eager young viewers to seasoned observers, felt the heat of the verbal battle nearing its breaking point. Anderson, Cooper, with a forced smile, tried to steer the discussion back on track, but his eyes betrayed unease as he sensed the storm about to hit. Cooper, deliberately slowing his voice to ease the tension, posed a new question. Miss Bondi, Miss Scheinlin, with the Justice Department's current hardline policies, how can we ensure the justice system isn't swayed by political agendas? She leaned forward, her lips pressed tightly before she spoke, her voice sharp as a razor. I'll make this clear because I don't like beating around the bush, he declared, her eyes locked on Bondi. The justice system must stand above all political schemes. I've sat on the bench for decades, facing all kinds of people from con artists to desperate mothers. What I've learned is that justice doesn't need flowery words or flashy policies to please someone at the top. What you're doing, Miss Bondi, is turning the Justice Department into a tool for those behind you. That's not justice, it's a political performance. The audience erupted in murmurs, some nodding in agreement, swept up by Judge Judy's factor. With decades of dominating the small screen, she knew how to command every eye in the room. Bondi, however, didn't flinch. She sat calmly, her hands resting lightly on the table, her gaze fixed on Judge Judy as if weighing each of her opponent's words before launching a counterattack. Cooper, sensing the rising heat, quickly interjected, Miss Bondi, do you have a response? But before Bondi could speak, Judge Judy raised her hand, signaling Cooper to stop. I'm not done, she interrupted, her voice ringing out like a verdict. She pointed directly at Bondi, her finger trembling slightly with emotion. She stands there, cloaked in the title of Attorney General, but all I see is someone working to please the powerful. I've handled real cases, faced real people, while you just follow orders from above. Don't talk to me about justice when all you're doing is dressing up an agenda. The studio erupted with applause from a group of audience members, swept up by Judge Judy's intensity. Others whispered, their eyes on Bondi, waiting to see how she would respond. Bondi took a deep breath, her lips curling slightly, not a friendly smile, but the expression of someone who had faced far tenser moments in real courtrooms. Miss Schindlin, she began, her voice low but sharp. I respect your experience, but justice isn't something performed on a pre-scripted TV show. Bondi's words struck like an arrow at Judge Judy, but before she could push further, Judge Judy exploded. TV show, she snapped, her eyes widening as if mortally offended. You dare talk to me about staged justice? I've spent my entire life making sure people are held accountable for their actions. Meanwhile, you're just a pawn in a political game, doing what's asked to keep your seat. You have no right to lecture me about justice. The air in the studio felt drained of oxygen. Some audience members gasped, unable to believe Judge Judy had launched such a fierce personal attack. Cooper, his face paling, tried to regain control. Miss Schindlin, let's keep the discussion professional. But Judge Judy didn't stop. She leaned closer to Bondi, her voice lowering but laced with menace. You think you understand justice because you're an attorney general. I've seen people like you come and go, and all they leave behind is a system in worse chaos. Don't try to teach me about justice when you're just following orders. Bondi, still unmoving, let Judge Judy's attacks hang in the air. Her eyes glinted as if she'd spotted a crack in her opponent's argument. The audience, sensing the mounting tension, was practically holding its breath. A few whispered, predicting Bondi wouldn't let the insults slide. Cooper, in a final effort to prevent an explosion, spoke quickly. Miss Bondi, would you like to respond? Bondi tilted her head slightly, her gaze never leaving Judge Judy, and gave a subtle nod as if accepting a challenge. Oh, I'll respond, she said. Bondi took a deep breath, her lips curving into a thin line knot, a friendly smile, but the expression of a strategist ready to deliver a decisive blow. She leaned forward, her eyes locked on Judge Judy. Her voice low but sharp as a honed blade. "Miss Schindlin," she began, each word delivered with chilling calm, "you talk about justice as if it only exists in your courtroom. But let me remind you of something. Real justice isn't staged for spotlights or the applause of a TV audience." The studio audience fell silent, feeling the weight of Bondi's every word. Judge Judy, though still projecting toughness, furrowed her brow slightly as if realizing she had entered a battle where she hadn't fully gauged her opponent's strength. Bondi continued, her voice unwavering, each sentence like a hammer striking Judy's arguments. "I've spent over 2 decades in real courtrooms, facing drug traffickers and criminals who make entire communities live in fear. While you settled neighbor disputes on TV, I stood before juries, fighting to get dangerous people off the streets. That's not politics, Miss Schindlin, that's protecting those who can't protect themselves." Whispers rippled through the audience, some nodding, drawn in by Bondi's confidence. Cooper, sensing the momentum shifting, tried to interject to keep the program on track. "Miss Bondi, could you elaborate on—" But Bondi raised her hand slightly, signaling him to stop, her eyes still fixed on Judge Judy. "I'm not done," she said, her voice low but commanding, like a prosecutor preparing to deliver a final argument. "You call me a pawn in a political game. Let me ask you something. When you turn court cases into entertainment, making millions off other people's pain, do you call that justice?" The question landed like a time bomb, plunging the studio into a chilling silence. Judge Judy, for the first time that evening, seemed to lose her usual confidence, her lips pressed tightly together, her eyes wavering as if cornered. Bondi, sensing the moment, pressed on with icy calm. "I've seen families torn apart by drugs, communities destroyed by crime. I don't sit on a bench judging for 30 minutes before cutting to commercial. I fight to change reality. You want to talk about responsibility? Then take responsibility for turning justice into a TV show, Miss Schindlin." The audience erupted in thunderous applause, not just for Bondi's sharpness, but for how she turned Judy's attack into a weapon against her. Bondi's final statement, like a finishing blow, rang with undeniable force. "Justice isn't a performance for you to yell in the audience to clap. Justice is what I do every day, keeping this country safe, whether you call it politics or not." Judge Judy sat motionless, her face like stone, her hands no longer tapping but clasped tightly together. Throughout her career she had always had the last word, but this time she found no response. Cooper, recognizing the historic moment that had just unfolded, quickly interjected, "Well, take a short break." His voice trembled slightly, as if he too was caught in the emotional whirlwind. The cameras panned across Judge Judy's face, now appearing smaller than ever, then lingered on Bondi, who sat upright, her gaze calm but gleaming with victory. As the studio lights dimmed for the commercial break, the audience couldn't take their eyes off Bondi. Her words, "Justice isn't a performance," echoed in the air, poised to explode on social media. Judge Judy, who had dominated every argument, now faced an opponent not only her equal but who had surpassed her in this moment. The studio buzzed with the sense that a TV legend had just been toppled and a political star had been forged. Anderson Cooper, striving to keep the program under control, adjusted his tone to ease the tension, but his eyes betrayed excitement about what was to come. "We're back with the town hall," Cooper said, his voice deliberately soft, as if navigating a minefield. "Miss Bondi, Miss Schindlin, let's move to another aspect. How can the Justice Department balance strong law enforcement with ensuring fairness for all communities? Miss Bondi, would you like to start?" The question was like an invitation for Bondi to solidify her argument, but also a chance for Judge Judy to reclaim her ground. Bondi nodded slightly, her gaze sweeping over the audience before returning to Cooper. "Thank you, Anderson," she said, her voice low and clear, like a lawyer preparing to deliver a final argument in court. "As Attorney General, I don't just look at criminals, but at the communities affected by them. When I was a prosecutor in Florida, I took down a drug cartel responsible for dozens of murders. The people in that neighborhood mostly were families didn't care about academic debates on justice. They wanted safety and peace, and that's what I fought to give them. Pam Bondi's policies today focus on eliminating threats not to score points, but to restore peace to those who need it most." Her words rang with sincerity, drawing the audience to her side. Some nodded, persuaded by how she tied real experience to current policy. However, Judge Judy wasn't ready to concede. She cleared her throat, sitting up straighter, trying to reclaim her usual confidence. "That's a touching story, Miss Bondi," she said, her voice tinged with sarcasm. but lacking its usual force. But I've seen thousands of cases like that in my courtroom. Gangs, criminals, they don't come from nowhere. If we don't teach people to take responsibility from the start, prosecuting a few drug lords is just like patching a hole on a sinking ship. Justice starts with the individual, not with grandiose campaigns. The audience grew quiet, sensing Judge Judy was trying to regain ground, but her argument lacked its earlier sharpness. Bondi, seeing the opportunity, leaned forward, her eyes never leaving her opponent. "You talk about personal responsibility," she replied, her voice steady but carrying the weight of someone who'd faced life-or-death situations. "I agree, but responsibility isn't just on the criminal, it's on those leading the justice system, like me, like you once did. When I prosecute a criminal, I don't just think about him. I think about the dozens of families who won't have to bury loved ones because of drugs. I think about kids who can play in the park without fearing gunfire. You want to talk about a sinking ship? I'm trying to build a new one, not just patch holes." Applause erupted from the audience, louder than before, as if they sensed Bondi was gaining the upper hand. Judge Judy's jaw tightened, her eyes flashing with frustration. She opened her mouth, attempting a counterattack. "You talk a good game," she said, her voice trembling slightly with emotion. "But all I see is someone trying to cover up the system's failures with fancy words. I've been in courtrooms longer than you, and I know justice isn't about grand campaigns, it's about doing right one case at a time." Bondi didn't flinch. She gave a slight smile, but it carried the strength of someone who knew she held the advantage. "One case at a time," she repeated, her voice tinged with challenge. "When I take down a gang, I'm not just solving one case, I'm preventing dozens more. While you judged petty disputes on TV, I faced threats that made entire cities tremble. That's not fancy talk, Miss Scheindlin, that's the reality I live every day." The studio exploded in applause again, this time even louder, like a wave crashing through the room. Judge Judy, though still projecting toughness, began to look smaller, as if Bondi's presence was overshadowing her. Cooper, realizing the debate was tilting heavily to one side, tried to pivot. "Let's take a question from the audience," he said quickly, pointing to someone in the crowd. But the audience, still caught up in the showdown, seemed uninterested. In the next question, they wanted to see Bondi keep going. Bondi, with the confidence of a prosecutor who just won a trial, sat upright, her gaze sweeping over the audience as if addressing all of America. "I'm not here to argue about theories," she said, her voice ringing like a declaration. "I'm here to ensure the justice system serves the people, not to entertain an audience or anyone else." Her words, though not a direct attack, were a statement that Bondi wasn't just winning this debate, she was reshaping how people viewed justice. As the studio lights dimmed and the town hall ended, the broadcast may have stopped, but a digital storm was erupting outside. The moment Pam Bondi, U.S. Attorney General, outmatched Judge Judy with sharp arguments and unshakable confidence, was etched into the minds of millions watching live, while Judge Judy left the stage with a guarded expression, trying to mask her unease. Bondi walked away with the demeanor of someone who had just won a historic trial. But the real stage now wasn't the studio, it was social media, where Bondi's final words, "The justice system serves the people, not to entertain an audience," were spreading at lightning speed, turning the debate into a global phenomenon. Within seconds of the program's end, phones lit up with posts, comments, and video clips from the broadcast. Social media platforms exploded as the hashtag #BondiOwnsJudy soared to the #1 spot globally in under 30 minutes. One user posted, "Pam Bondi just turned Judge Judy into a defendant in her own courtroom. This is peak debating." The post quickly racked up tens of thousands of likes and shares, accompanied by a 15-second clip capturing Bondi's closing argument with her confident gaze and the thunderous applause from the studio audience. The clip, like a spark meeting wind, hit 20 million views in just hours. One account created a video splicing Bondi's arguments with dramatic music from an action movie, captioned, "When you're a real prosecutor facing the queen of TV." The video garnered 5 million views and thousands of comments. From Bondi is a legend to Judge Judy finally met her match. Other content creators jumped in, producing videos, analyzing Bondi, every gesture from how she leaned in to counterattack to her unflinching stare when facing Judge Judy. Some even reenacted the debate with friends playing Bondi and Judy, sending online communities into hysterics. Mainstream media quickly joined the fray. CNN, the network hosting the town hall, aired an analysis that same evening titled, "Pam Bondi, the debate-defining moment." Journalist Dana Bash called Bondi's performance a masterclass in confidence and practical reasoning, while acknowledging that Judge Judy may have met her toughest opponent yet. Fox News, though typically supportive of figures like Bondi, gave airtime to defend Judge Judy. Commentator Sean Hannity said, "Shinlin is an icon, but Bondi proved she's a true legal warrior." Major outlets like the New York Times and the Washington Post also weighed in with in-depth articles. The Times ran the headline, "From Courtroom to Political Stage, Pam Bondi redefines debate," while the Post emphasized, Bondi's silencing of Judge Judy marks a turning point in political communication. The political reaction was no less fervent. Republicans quickly praised Bondi. One senator posted, "Pam Bondi just showed the nation why she's the perfect choice for Attorney General strength and truth." Conversely, some Democrats tried to downplay the event, with one congressman writing, "Judge Judy is an icon, but this debate shows we need to focus on policy, not emotion." Even those who didn't support Bondi had to acknowledge her sharpness. An independent analyst wrote, "I don't agree with Bondi politically, but her handling of Judge Judy was a masterclass in debating." Online forums in Europe and Asia were flooded with comments from admiration for Bondi's confidence to curiosity about Judge Judy's confrontational style. One user on a Japanese forum wrote, "This is why I love American politics, like an action movie." While social media and news outlets erupted, Judge Judy's team went into crisis mode. A press release was issued, emphasizing that Ms. Shinlin has always respected frank debates and will continue to defend her views. But this explanation was overshadowed by the wave of support for Bondi on social media. One user wrote, "Judge Judy is a legend, but Bondi just rewrote the rulebook." Judy's fans tried to defend her, but their voices were drowned out by the excitement surrounding Bondi. Bondi, in contrast, remained silent on social media, letting the debate moment speak for itself. But her team, sensing an opportunity, began sharing laudatory posts from political allies, reinforcing her image as a strong leader. Within 24 hours, the event was no longer just a debate, it had become a cultural phenomenon, a lesson in argumentation, and a milestone in Bondi's career. As the dust settled from the confrontation, one thing was clear: Pam Bondi hadn't just won a debate, she had reshaped how the public viewed justice and power. Judge Judy, though still an icon, faced the reality that her era might be giving way to newer, stronger voices. The showdown, though only an hour on air, became a cultural milestone, a lesson in debate, and an unforgettable moment. The moment Bondi, with her sharp confidence and impenetrable arguments, silenced Judge Judy, an invincible television icon, became a landmark not only in politics but also in pop culture. This wasn't just a debate about justice, it was a profound lesson in the power of argumentation, the shift in how the public perceives authority, and the role of media in shaping perception. As the world continued to share and analyze this moment, its significance transcended a single broadcast, leaving an indelible mark. Pam Bondi, with her calm yet commanding performance, achieved what few dared to dream, challenging a television legend and winning not just with words but with authenticity. She didn't just defend her role as Attorney General, she redefined the image of a leader in the digital age, one who could blend real-world experience with sharp communication. The moment she turned Judy's personal attack into an opportunity to showcase her strength proved a truth in modern politics. Victory doesn't come from shouting louder, but from speaking rightly at the right time and in the right way. Bondi showed that justice, when presented with sincerity and grounded in reality, can captivate even the toughest audiences. Conversely, Judge Judy, though still a cultural icon, faced a harsh reality. Her blunt, confrontational style, once an unbeatable weapon, might no longer hold the same power in a world that values nuance and substantive arguments. This debate, though just a moment in her long career, forced the public and herself to reflect: can an icon of the past adapt to the demands of a new era? Despite her team's efforts to control the narrative, her silence in the face of Bondi became a haunting imager, reminder that even the strongest can be challenged by new voices. The deeper significance of this showdown lies in how it reflected a transfer of power in society. Bondi represented a generation of leaders who leveraged both practical experience and the power of modern media, while Judge Judy, though still formidable, symbolized a different era, one where dominance came from overpowering opponents, amplified by social media. This event showed that today's public doesn't just seek entertainment, they crave truth-based discussions delivered with confidence and respect. Bondi, by holding her ground without raising her voice, set a new standard for political debate. The showdown also raised bigger questions about justice and the role of media. It served as a reminder that justice isn't just about courtroom rulings or Justice Department policies, it's also about how we, as a society, discuss and shape it. Bondi turned a televised debate into a lesson on accountability, not just for criminals, but for those leading the system. Meanwhile, Judge Judy, though defeated in this moment, helped spark a vital conversation about how we view justice. As a performance or a true mission, the dramatic clash between Judge Judy and Pam Bondi in this story was more than just a televised debate. It reflected the tensions and expectations in today's American society, a society divided by politics, media, and views on justice. In the context of 2025 America, where social media amplifies every moment and public debates often turn into image battles, this story offers a profound lesson on communication and leadership. In a high-pressure digital world, Bondi's ability to stay calm under Judy's personal attacks, using her prosecutorial experience to deliver fact-based arguments like when she spoke about prosecuting drug cartels to protect communities, demonstrated the power of composure and authenticity. In contrast, Judge Judy's aggressive, confrontational style, though effective on her TV show, was seen as outdated when faced with an opponent who blended calmness with sharp reasoning. The takeaway is that in real life, especially in today's America, where discussions about politics or society can easily become conflicts, we should prioritize communication based on truth and respect over impulsive emotions, instead of personal attacks. Take a page from Bondi. Listen, respond with real-world experience, and stand firm without raising your voice. This not only builds trust but creates lasting impact. As Bondi's globally viral statement showed, apply this lesson to work, family, or social media. When facing disagreement, calmness and clear reasoning are stronger than any criticism. Thank you for following this historic moment when Pam Bondi silenced Judge Judy. Hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and don't miss out on top analyses of politics and justice. See you in the next video, where we'll continue exploring showdowns that change how the world sees